If you've been watching us here at Bus Grease Monkey, you know that we work on these vintage buses and we see all kinds of problems with brakes. We're going to show you some bad things that we've seen and then tell you the story of the absolute worst we've ever seen. So we see stuff like this all the time where there's these huge cracks in brake drums. This is heat checking and it's very excessive. This brake drum, not too long, would have actually just broken half. That's a very, very large crack. It's crazy that we see this, but we see it quite often on there. And it's not just on drum brakes. We'll see it on disc brakes. Here's a disc brake caliper on a bus. This is a 50,000 pound Bravo, and you can see that crack going almost all the way through the inside of it. You can see the line on the top there. So that's crazy. So the amount of heat that gets in these brakes and it causes that metal fatigue and the heat checking. And if it's not looked at, it can be very, very dangerous. And then of course we see all the time where we have wheel seal leaks, where the brakes are just covered in grease and oil. So there's no way that brake is going to be working good. This particular bus, it's crazy, the amount of grease that's on there. But I'm going to tell you the story of my friend Bill. And we did a video on this. If you've been following us for a few years, I think back in 2019, he had this bus here that was a GM 4106, and he hired a local mechanic to come out because his brakes weren't working very good. The local mechanic came out to work on his brakes and took the front brakes, put all new shoes on it, new S-cam bushings, everything. And he's like, man, my brakes are worse than when the guy came here and worked on them. So Scott, can you please come out here and fix them? So we went out there to look at his bus, and this is what we found. It's absolutely unbelievable and so disturbing. So here's the S-cam. And the direction of the brake chamber pushes that way. So it rotates that way. So the cam is just digging in. It works great the other direction. So what I assume has happened here, because neither front brake is working. This is a brand new brake that was put on a year ago. It's never touched the drum once. So I'm assuming left side and right side were taken all apart. They replaced the S-cam bushings, and it looks to me like they switched them around. They accidentally got their left hand on the right hand side and right hand on the left hand side, so they're in backwards. If I loosen the slack adjuster back, now you see the brakes are expanding. But if you go to step on the brake, it goes the opposite way. The very first thing that I noticed was a strange rubbing sound, like a humming, high-pitched scrape when I spun this wheel. And the very first thing that I looked at was this brake spring. On a GM, there's a little radius on here to go around the hub. That radius must go to the outside, and this spring got installed with the radius to the inside, and this has been rubbing on the hub the whole time. And usually that would wear right through that spring until it breaks. It also wears a big groove mark into the hub itself. And then that's when I noticed that the S-cam was not in the right position, and it took me a while to figure out how the hell it got like that. And then once I found out that they replaced S-cam bushings on both the front sides, I realized that they switched left and right. Alright, so this is the S-cam that was just over on the other side. It was on the driver's side, and it's the passenger side one, so I just swapped it. But you can see how this one that was in there was doing the same thing. When it would push this way, it would just lock and it would never spread. So now that this one from the other side is over here, so the lefts were on the rights were on the lefts, they were backwards. So now when it rotates, this one will go clockwise, it will do the right direction, and everything gets adjusted. So when the brake comes out, it expands. So you can clearly see that this brake has not been working, and that these are still the brand new shoes they put on a year ago. Because of the reversed S-cam on there, there was no way for that brake to actually work. Very scary actually that happened, and it's been driven for a year before I was able to get over here and look at it and see what happened to it. But Yeah, you always want to make sure that you check everything out, and obviously the left and rights are different on the cam because they turn the opposite directions. Um, it's one of those things you would think would never happen, and yet it happened. Okay, don't tune out yet, because we know this is horrible. He drove around for a year because the mechanic accidentally disabled his front brakes completely. So he had no front brakes at all for a year. And then it gets worse because when we went back to the rears to check the rear brakes, the passenger side was completely out of adjustment. So when he would step on the brakes, the push rod would come all the way out of the can and the brake wasn't all the way applying. So he'd adjusted it the wrong way. So not only were both front brakes not working, but the passenger side rear brake was 100% not working as well. And then wait until you see what we found on the one brake that was working. So I'm working on this GM 4106, pulling the hub to replace a stripped out wheel stud. It's got no thread on it. It wouldn't hold torque. So when I pull the brake drum, so I'm going to pull the hub and replace the seal because there's a little bit of a leak starting back there. Much easier to do. Pull the brake drum off and I see this huge wear mark in the middle of the brake drum. Well, first of all, you can see this is the bus that had the reversed S cams in the front, so there was no front braking on it, and the right rear brake was completely out of adjustment. It was a full travel on the push rod, and then this was the one that was working good. Now I get it off and you can see that the brake shoe's only been rubbing 1/4 or 1/2 of the inside of this drum here, and then there's this really unusual deep scratching marks here, and then this is kind of rusty where there really hasn't been much wear out here. So all the pressure's been on the inside. And I saw that, I'm like, what the hell can cause that? It's pretty deep. You can't maybe tell in the picture here, but I mean, my fingernail catches the whole thing all the way down. And then I looked at the S-cam, and remember, this is the one good brake. I don't know if you can see it. The S-cam is in there like cocked, and you can see a big flat wear mark on the end of the S-cam where the S-cam the bushings are so bad that the S-cam is tweaked in there, and that was rubbing inside of the drum. I don't know if I can wiggle this all. It's just not the right position. Let's see, I got a flashlight. I don't know if you can tell the angle on it here. That's kind of the angle that it's at instead of that, where it should go straight. Crazy. And I said this was the one good brake, so half of a good brake is what he had going on this bus. That's why his stopping was so terrible. So I'm going to call Luke at US Coach, see about ordering S-cams, S-cam bushings, seals, all that fun stuff for in there. So I just took the S-cam out. I'm replacing these S-cam bushings. Let's see if I can show you here. Look at that. Well, that is the story of the worst brakes I've ever seen on a bus. I mean, it's a super nice bus, and I feel so bad for Bill because he hired somebody to come out and he paid somebody to do all that work on the bus, and all they did was disable his brakes and adjust his one the wrong way, so there was no brake, and just made it worse. Thank goodness he had Jake brakes, those at least helped too, but he was afraid, you know, he knew the bus, he says, it should stop better than this. It didn't have great brakes when he bought it, so he didn't really know how good they should be, but he's like, I kept saying, you know, when you hit on the brakes, everything should want to fly out of the bus, and he said, that's not what's happening. So he would just go slower and stay back, but you know, he thinks he hired somebody to fix the brakes, and maybe this is as good as brakes get on an old bus, but completely wrong. And it's so unfortunate that that happened to him, but I was glad we were able to get him fixed up and stopping good. But that's just crazy. You know, we know there's a lot of crazy stuff out there on the road, and when you hire somebody, you never know what you're going to get, I guess.